Joy Reid is no more. Joy Reid's been fired. She's been canned. She's been pink slipped. She's been axed. She's been cut. She is dunzo over at MSNBC. Before her final broadcast, she took to the interwebs and she did another one of those bizarre, freakish selfie videos to her social media following. And here's what happened in the middle of it.
My show had value, and that, I'm sorry, that that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And I say this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize. And that it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them, or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And so I'm not sorry. I'm just proud of my show.
She should be proud of that show. She just described a show that is carbon copy exactly the same across the board at MSNBC and at CNN and every other broadcast network. She was expendable. She brought no value to that network. But to stand up there and suggest that she got fired because she was courageous, because she told BLM stories and Gaza stories. Let me tell you something, Joy Reid. That's what kept you on the air. The fact that you did BLM stories, or may I just say the BLM movement, is what kept you on the air. MSNBC could have fired you and should have fired you years ago because it was just a bad show, but they were terrified to do so because they didn't want you to show up on their front lawn with a megaphone screaming that you were racist, which you're basically doing now, and you're having your colleagues do the same thing. It's actually rather pathetic. But all the tears reminded us of another one of these bizarro world selfie videos that Joy Reid did. I think it was during the pandemic when people were losing their jobs. And she had this to say about people crying about losing their jobs. These are people that weren't Joy Reid, of course. Other people crying about losing their jobs.
In America, there's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears. Really white tears in general, because that's what Karens are, right? They Karen out, and then as soon as they get caught, it's like, green waterworks.
Tears, white tears, Karen tears. Can we go back to yesterday's self-indulgent video again? What did I miss here?
And then it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you.
Oh, her friend Karen. Tears, Karen and out, doing a Karen. I wonder what color Karen is. I want to know what race Karen is. Not that I care about race, but Joy Reid cares about race a whole lot. Let's go back to how Joy started her show yesterday, her final show. Oh, look, she dressed for the part. Is she wearing a tracksuit? Hold on. Her show spent money on branded tracksuits for the whole team that match the color of the backdrop. What's the budget over there? We barely have Larry mugs. Where's my Larry mug? They got branded tracksuits. All right, how'd the show go? Let's see how she's starting it. She's going out with a bang. Let's see what she decided to emphasize here for her final word on MSNBC.
We begin tonight with what I think is the question. When you are in the midst of a crisis, and specifically a crisis of democracy, how do you resist? When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here. So what, if anything, can you do about it? Well, for one thing, you can try to learn from history, from what people in this situation in countries around the world and in America have done before. As my friend Rachel Maddow always says, history is here to help. America hasn't always been a free country for everyone, and we've had resistance movements from day one. From enslaved people fighting their captivity. Shout out to Harriet Tubman, who was a 92%er before 92%ing was cool. And even taking up arms during the Civil War. To the women's movement and the workers' rights movement and the Stonewall gay rights movement. They've all been versions of the fight to make this a free country for everyone and to have a true multiracial democracy. And that is history's most important lesson, right? That the most important thing, the first rule, is to fight back, to never stop resisting. Do not obey in advance, as Tim Snyder put it. Do not take the knee, to throw in a Game of Thrones reference. Even if it's scary or uncomfortable or inconvenient, just keep saying no, or finding creative ways to say no in small ways and large. Medgar Evers said, do not shop where they will not employ you. Dr. King championed the Montgomery bus boycotts to become the leader of the civil rights movement. The labor rights movement shut down factories and hobbled industries to win the 40-hour work week that you enjoy right now, and more recently to ensure the right of workers to work from home during COVID. People have marched against the Vietnam War and the war in Iraq and against the decimation of Gaza using our tax dollars. You don't always win every battle, but the whole thing is about resisting.
She is quite the martyr, isn't she? And she's fighting for everybody. It's amazing she showed all those great American protests there, but nowhere in there was the MAGA movement, America First movement, or the Tea Party movement. Those are great modern day examples of political protest in this country, but no, she didn't have room for them. She is the Rosa Parks of cable news. Although it's interesting, she replaced Melissa Harris Perry on weekends at MSNBC, another Black woman famous for wearing tampons as earrings one time to protest something. And Joy Reid replaced her and then ascended up the ladder to her primetime show. Joy, there have been a lot of liberal Black women on MSNBC before you, and there will be plenty after you. You're not a civil rights icon just because your show sucked and they canceled you. But then as the show progressed, they had the ubiquitous panel discussion, as we always have on cable news, and she brought on 3 of the remaining white anchors that still have their show on MSNBC. That's right. The 2 primetime hosts that got fired are women of color, but these whiteys stayed, plus Chris Hayes. Or is that Chris Hayes? No, that's Rachel Maddow. I always get them confused. So she brought them on to have a panel discussion about how her show is ending.
And Lawrence O'Donnell, it's exactly like the specials, except I can't ask Maddow for cocktail tips when she's trying to write 8,000 words of copy. And I'm like, well, can't you just tell me one thing about the cocktails? No, I have to write this copy. Thank you all for being here. Let's talk about this, because I wanted you guys to be here with me, because you are my comrades in arms in covering this insane moment that we're in when it comes to what is happening in our country. I want to start with you, Rachel. I would love for you to give our audience just your take, your tips. What do you think people can be doing right now that's effective?
Well, first I want to say that I love you, Joy.
I love
and
you.
that I am bereft.
She loves her and she's bereft, but she couldn't bother to bring her ass to the studio to say goodbye. She loves her and she's bereft, but I'm just going to connect here on my Skype with, what is that, 9600 baud AOL.com connection? Only O'Donnell actually got to the set to say goodbye. Nicole Wallace couldn't even remember to take her reading glasses off until halfway through the segment. You can never convince me. I don't know if there's ever going to be any proof of it. There's no evidence, it's speculation, but you will never be able to convince me that Rachel Maddow did not either have a heads up about Joy Reid's pink slip or maybe even gave approval for it. I know enough about Rachel Maddow and her reputation at that network and in other media ventures that she's been associated with to know that she's got a heavy hand. It goes to who her colleagues are. My favorite part about this, though, if you think about it, this is perfect for MSNBC and Joy Reid in particular. In her final segment, we're all just going to talk to each other and agree with each other about what we believe. No dissenting voices needed. In fact, we're not even going to bring an analyst or a politician or a guest of any sort. We'll just keep it right here with our little family of paid employees at MSNBC. We'll have a conversation amongst ourselves. Oh, is the audience still there? Do we care about you? No, we don't. We don't give a about you or your politics or your beliefs or how you vote. That's the perfect ending for this show. Actually, no. This is the perfect ending for the Joy Reid Show.
Shout out to our amazing readers, our audience. I just love running into y'all in the airport, on these streets, and on social media. I could not love or appreciate you more. Thank you, thank you, thank you for holding us down. Almost 5 years, we are a toddler, and we out in these streets, in this world, and we are not going to stop. That is tonight's readout. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and on Substack at it's at joyandreid.substack.com. Also on TikTok and Facebook at Joy Reid Official. Inside with Jen Psaki starts now.
Follow me on Blue Sky and Threads, she says. Don't forget to hit me up on MySpace. Y'all still talking on CompuServe? Because that place is lit. I'll be all over it. The live stream Substack between Joy Reid, Jim Acosta, and Jen Rubin is going to blow this country up. I can't wait for it. Later in the day yesterday, we learned that there were more firings, just carnage at MSNBC, including Katie Fang's weekend show. She's Asian American. Jonathan Capehart's weekend show. He's black. A gentleman of Arab descent whose last name is unpronounceable. That may be why his show didn't last either. And Lester Holt, black anchor of NBC News, announced he was stepping down. I'm sure it was voluntary. Even Keith Olbermann took notice of the fact that MSNBC and NBC News is guilty of, well, let's just call it racism. Sorry, these are your rules that you set up, political left. I sit through all of my DEI trainings, and I am told when white people are hired and retained and given oodles of money like Rachel Maddow is, and the non-whites are all fired and subjugated to lesser positions, that's an indication of racism. And that's exactly what NBC News is doing right now. I like to not go there, but these are your rules. I'm just following them. And in fact, Rachel Maddow, when she had her program last night, well, even she had to draw attention to it and take the side of the righteous few who have been fired.
An even bigger programming change is at 7 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern, where Joy Reid's show, The Readout, ended tonight. And Joy is not taking a different job in the network. She is leaving the network altogether. And that is very, very, very hard to take. I am 51 years old. I have been gainfully employed since I was 12. And I have had so many different kinds of jobs, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But in all of the jobs I have had, in all of the years I have been alive, there is no colleague for whom I have had more affection and more respect than Joy Reid. I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door.
You know what? The more overboard she goes here about how great Joy Reid is and how much she loves her, the more I am convinced that she participated in her axing. I'm sorry. That's just, Rachel Maddow got her start on MSNBC as a guest on the Tucker Carlson show. That's right. There was a Tucker Carlson show on MSNBC. They had a different perspective back then. Then she was a regular guest on Keith Olbermann's show. Keith Olbermann was the big dog. He was the top show at MSNBC. He made all the money. He had the highest profile. He was the man at MSNBC. And Rachel Maddow was a regular guest and sometimes a guest host for him. And then when Keith Olbermann started to have some problems with management, as he always does, no matter where he's working, and they ended up firing him, Rachel Maddow was there to twist the knife. And now she's the big dog, and it's amazing how that works. And then she goes on to communicate to her audience that she's on the righteous side of this entire thing here. She took Joy Reid's side. There's just, hey, my hands are tied. I'm under contract here. She couldn't do anything about it. Sure. Let me ask you something. You think if Rachel Maddow said, if you fire Joy Reid, I'm out of here, you don't think that would have made a difference? But of course she didn't do that. So here she is going after her network.
It is not my call, and I understand that, but that's what I think. I will tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Fang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
It's indefensible. You read between the lines. She's calling NBC racist. She's calling her network racist. She works for racist. She works for basically the KKK of cable and network news. That's what she's saying right now. We'll now roll the clip where at the end of Rachel Maddow's program, she walked out under protest and said, I cannot work for these racists anymore. I cannot collect the $25 million a year they give me to do a podcast and 1 or 2 shows a week. I cannot, in good conscience, take that dirty blood money, and I will now relinquish my anchor chair and my salary to a person of color. In fact, I want Joy Reid to come back here. I will pay Joy Reid out of my pocket to take over my show. Could we play that clip, please? Can we? No? Oh, she didn't do that? I'm sorry. Miss 51-year-old integrity over there, who is all about the principles and the values and diversity and inclusion and equity. She didn't do that? She didn't actually make a personal sacrifice to help out the friend that she loves and that she's learned so much about? Really? That's weird. It's almost like she's a two-faced hypocrite. Almost.